There's World Trade Center 7 coming down, the typical edited video clip. And here we go with another one, edited short video clip, like what you see on InfoWars. And then a picture of the smoke. Okay, now here is the real video clip, unedited. The penthouse just disappeared into the interior of the building, collapsing into the building, World Trade Center 7. Okay. There's lots of evidence in this video. There it is again. That's the penthouse collapsing into the building. And then the building takes a solid 10 seconds further to begin collapsing as a whole. So the progressive collapse takes a total of like 18 seconds all the way to the ground. So it's not falling, the collapse didn't take place in 6 seconds. Now, this video combines a lot of good evidence. Even the still photographs are evidence of, how intense the fires were inside the building. And what would cause that many fires? Well, another huge burning building just collapsed. Not far from it, there was a building between Building 7 and the closest tower, the collapsing tower. All right, look at that gaping gash. It's huge. That's a lot of structural damage that is never discussed. And here we go again. You'll see it come up here. There it is. The gash is starting to appear towards the east side of the south face, I guess. I guess this is the south face. There it is. Look at that gash. It goes all the way down the building, for crying out loud. It's huge. It's massive damage to the building and to the structure of the building, the steel. That was caused by a huge ribbon of steel that the closest tower that collapsed, okay? And went over another building and into Building 7. Okay, that's how huge that steel was that went into Building 7. Caused that damage. That just caused that penthouse to disappear again. It drops into the building. That's the gash in Building 7 is directly beneath that penthouse that disappears into the top of the building. Okay. I don't believe Alex Jones shows any of these videos that show the East Penthouse dropping into the building. If he did show it, he probably just glossed over it as, unimportant, too unimportant to mention. But he usually shows the edited short video clip. There it is again, and is disappearing into the building. That's the penthouse. It's a collapse. Okay, that wasn't explosions caused by detonated charges, explosive charges. Okay, that was caused by a combination of severe structural damage to the building and fires inside the building. Now, the degree to which fires influence the overall process is difficult to say. But apparently all the fires inside of 9/11 from that hot steel falling into World Trade Center 7 was enough to cause significant burning inside of World Trade Center 7. Enough to the point where most of the day you got massive amounts of smoke coming out of the building. And there are videos of all the floors that caught completely on fire. Not all of them, but the ones that could be seen with the flames coming out the windows. This is a superb video that was made years ago. And there it is again, the gaping gash on the side of Building 7. And I lost track of this for the longest time and recently reacquired it. keep it safely tucked away. There it is again. Look at that gash. It's huge. That was a huge piece of steel that went into building 7, clearly. Inside the building is probably in there still. Hot steel. Okay, probably. It had to have been hot enough to start fires, office fires. All over the place. And you never hear people discuss this. There are liars everywhere. It's worse than what happened in Germany before, during, and after Germany with their camp systems, with claims of, homicidal gas chambers and what have you. It's all lies. Eyewitness testimony is next to worthless in our society for any really significant events that take place. Because so many of them they lie. People lie all the time. They're connected people, like out in California. You got connected people out there that are connected with both British intelligence and communist Chinese intelligence at the same time, for crying out loud. Conspiring against the United States and the U.S. Constitution. How significant the fires were in World Trade Center 7, I can't really say. It's clear, though, they were burning all over the place. And some floors were so engulfed that, you could see it in videos very clearly. Fire coming out of the windows, producing a lot of smoke. Of course, you got engineers, that big group of engineers out of Alaska, claiming, they're experts on, how this building could not have been brought down by fires, but I don't see it coming down by fires alone. Clearly, there was structural damage to steel. It's the same thing that happened, basically, with the Twin Towers. The airliners hit the Twin Towers, clearly on video, that's what happened, and there's at least one still photograph or image that I accessed on either YouTube or online somewhere that showed clearly an American Airlines airliner impacting the buildings, okay? And when those airliners struck, they struck at high speed, not low speed, like they, claim to have originally designed the Twin Towers not to be vulnerable to a 707 coming in for a landing at JFK. Okay, and that's a situation that is low speed and also low on fuel, comparatively speaking. But these airliners that came in, 737s, I believe, they came in at high speed, okay, well over 400 miles an hour. Significantly over 400 miles an hour for each airliner. And they were laden with fuel because they recently took off from airports in the region. Look at that gash. It's huge. Only a huge piece of steel could have done that. I guarantee you there's massive damage to the steel of World Trade Center 7 inside there. You know how many people online argued over this issue for decades? Thousands, probably numbering thousands of people just got online, got onto all the web forums, and just dominated, insisting that there had to be explosive charges planted in World Trade Center 7 or some nonsense about, pulling the building, which is ludicrous for a building like this. You don't pull something like this demolition-wise, all right? And you wouldn't even use that terminology as a figure of speech unless you knew to plant the idea in people's heads using a figure of speech. Like that Silverstein guy who benefited from this catastrophe so much. Banking connections everywhere. There it is. Over and over and over again, you can see that penthouse just disappearing into the building. It's collapsing. Okay, there's no demolition charges going off. All this nonsense about directed energy weapons being used or nuclear explosions going off. The videos make it plain what happened. Yeah, but this whole harassment thing, I'm beginning to realize they start out real early in the process of targeting someone. They'll put people near you, decades back in your life, that do compromise things in your presence. And then they would associate your name with that, not the individual who was actually engaging in the behavior. It's called death by association. It's an early in the phase form of harassment that you don't even know is taking place at the time, because it's borderline behavior. It's behavior you would think is really odd at the time and unacceptable, and you would be frowning at it and everything, politely, I guess. And then you just forget about it for decades, right? Look at the Home Alone 2 video. Donald Trump at the Plaza Hotel in the lobby, right? There were rumors for years on the internet, not big rumors, but rumors, that something akin to Jeffrey Epstein was taking place at the Plaza Hotel on a certain floor. Okay? Again, maybe Donald Trump had nothing to do with that. Maybe he did, who knows. But he is invited in to do a scene at the Plaza Hotel, a cameo scene, right? And then later on, they decide they're going to get rid of it from the movie, play games with it that way. But that, to me, was an attempt at death by association. There's that gash again. Now, clearly, jet airliners did hit the World Trade Center towers. Okay, we saw that on video. And you could argue all you want about, reflections on the bottom of the planes looking like, installed devices of some kind. It's a bunch of nonsense. There were airliners traveling at high speed. Okay, there's a video that, reveals the sound of jet engines just cranked up high and a jet coming in fast overhead right before bang. You hear a loud bang, and then there's the tower. There's the explosion, right? I remember that clear as day. It was high speed, not low speed. Anyway, if you were to somehow remote control these airliners, which I don't believe happened, they would still come in at high speed, and they would puncture their way into the interior of the building, knowing ahead of time that the physics involved would ensure that, yes, this will be successful. These airliners will penetrate into the interior of the building and damage steel all over the place and start massive building fires that build up heat inside these huge, effectively, chimney-type buildings with large interior spaces and that are vulnerable to not only the fires, but, well, they're vulnerable to the fires. All the fireproofing having been swept away by the airliner, right? Because the collapses started right where the airliners hit. That's on video. But you got massive fires going on inside that building, all up through the building, building up heat inside that building, towards the top of the building, collecting up there, and just heat building. The steel gets weaker. The trusses, which are part of what made World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, vulnerable to fires in the first place, begin to flex, especially where the airliner is adding so much weight, all that molten aluminum, to the point where it's literally spilling out the side of the building. That's on video too. Just weighing down on everything, and then the inadequate connections between those trusses and the steel infrastructure of the building contributing to the problem. Okay, what results is a building collapse. Okay, it's all about design. In my opinion, those buildings were designed to collapse exactly the way they collapsed. And they distract you with stories about 707 airliners coming in for a landing to keep you from thinking in terms of high-speed airliners with even larger fuel capacity than the 707 coming in at high speed and puncturing into the buildings. Okay, people won't think in terms of that because they're distracted by, lore that's set up ahead of time. They did the same thing with the German camp system. Okay, the 6 million number comes up even before World War II. And it's symbolic. Same as the 6 seconds of this video. here saying, they claim it collapsed in 6 seconds at free fall speed or whatever. It's 18 seconds. Okay, and the penthouse clearly falls into the interior structure about 10 seconds prior to that 6-second mark that they like to use. I can remember on that morning of September 11th, 2001, I woke up early in the morning. And this was after having a dream. It was a dream that woke me up rather than my alarm clock to go to work. And I had just had a dream of submarines surfacing in Hawaii and attacking Pearl Harbor, and then submerging and disappearing again. And I thought that was really odd because it was a very memorable dream that was clear as a bell. One of those dreams, you know what I'm saying? And then later that morning, I was out in the parking lot that used to be at 600 East Colfax Avenue in Denver, Colorado. And I happened to look up at Republic Plaza, and there was a shadow of Wells Fargo Center on it for a period of time. I just kind of watched it. And I caught it right when it was just clearly profiled. And then it kind of moved along the face of the building. And I thought, wow, that is so interesting. I'd never noticed that before. Apparently this is an annual thing because in the following year, I showed up there again, and for days during that month, I just kept track of any shadows on the side of that building. And the shadow returned exactly at that same time. And it was at the exact time that the first airliner impacted the first tower in New York City. And left a shadow on the side of the building. Well, that ultimately resulted in this quote-unquote shadow on the side of World Trade Center here with it in the form of that gash. But whether that was designed or not is harder to say, because that gash does show up right underneath that penthouse on the top of World Trade Center 7. Almost like it's a quote-unquote shadow, a banking shadow. Because the shadow on Republic Plaza was shaped like a cash register, just like Wells Fargo Center is shaped. And it happens every year if the cloud cover allows for it. If there's a lack of clouds on that morning, there will be a shadow cast. And I couldn't come up with any other time of the year where the same thing took place as ideally. None of the other shadows that I observed were as ideal as the one on that day and that morning. Then we have shadows on the sides of the buildings in New York, 2 of them shaped like jet airliners. Another one looking like a dark ribbon hanging down the side of Building 7. Which I find to be, shall we say, an interesting quote-unquote coincidence. Okay, these people love to create those kinds of things, quote-unquote coincidences. Now, back to the harassment issue. Later forms of harassment are much more obvious in the phase that they are targeting you, I guess. This is where you notice that they're spying. You'll notice that people are spying on you first, and then they'll play with that as a harassment. eventually things get so bad where, toxins show up in your food at restaurants and what have you, and you get food poisoning at school or whatever. And you can't make your presentation in class with, clear language at all, because the food poisoning that you're suffering is making you get diarrhea. It's also screwing with your head, because I guess the toxins involved in bacteria production or whatever mess with your head. For some toxins. Yeah, the fact that all of this evidence in this video is so systematically covered up and on such a large scale indicates lying of all over, people all over the United States and Europe lying over these issues, while people elsewhere in the world laugh on at the whole scene. In order for people to poison other people, they need a supply of some kind. Some people might produce spider venom for the purpose of food poisoning people, for example. Generally messing with their heads, because there's bacteria and stuff in spider venom. Plus the venom itself is, well, if it survives getting through your stomach acid, it could probably mess with your head. Now, they also like to distract. Stories about, who benefits from this, like Silverstein and, some... it's ultimately European banking and ultimately communist China who are becoming bank in the world, you might say. So Britain is the thing that is linked up with China on that level, okay? Cutting deals and all that. And British have their inroads into banking in London, dating way back. And then there's the Rothschilds in Germany. And then you got Swiss banking, all networked together. With, of course, Wells Fargo casting that shadow on the quote-unquote republic. Shadow is a Capricorn symbol. Okay. Darkness, pure darkness at least, is an Aries symbol. Capricorn Aries is a common symbolic combination used for large-scale infiltration taking place in our world in the form of a Soviet underground infiltration that we have been conditioned to call deep state infiltration. Then there's the top-down infiltration that takes place. That's out of, shall we say, Israeli quarters. Religion-wise. And those two forms of infiltration are related, like a continuum or a dimension. And this is what took over Russia and created the Soviet Union. KGB is heavily laden with this top-down infiltration. Is underground KGB, whatever it is called now. We called it for a while in the United States Weather Underground. Apparently, according to Sinks with the Zodiac, the movie, Weather Underground got help from what you might call Black Panthers. That's the scene in the movie theater with the detective smoking the black cigarette after he exited the scene inside the theater, just like Weather Underground exited the scene. And the people that, Weather Underground were networked in with, they infiltrated their way into government massively from the communist channels and the top-down channels, even some, informed the Clintons, for example. Hillary is what you might call dual religion. Just like Biden is a proxy president for Obama networking. It exactly mirrors the situation with BLM and Antifa. So you can think of Biden as Antifa and the Biden family as an Antifa family, only they're rich enough to keep it under control, right? But I'm showing this video over and over and over again, just so it's clear as a bell what happened that day. Okay. Nobody spent weeks planting demolition charges in these buildings. Nobody spent weeks painting materials onto elevator shafts and copiers and filing cabinets and structural steel. Okay, it wasn't required and was understood ahead of time that it would not be required. Okay, the conspiracy.
Hello everyone,
Juxtaposition
here. Today's video will be entitled 9/11 Port Facility Murder. And today marks the 22nd year anniversary of the 9/11 World Trade Center demolition mass murder of approximately 2,611
and they kept
people,
it secret. You can't find evidence.
Innocent people going to work, minding their own business through no fault of their own, and they were taken out in a military intelligence command and controlled demolition of the 7 buildings on or around the World Trade Center property, which is Port Facility of New York. That's right, I said port facility, which means 24/7 surveillance, controlled military, United States Navy, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO-controlled New York port facility. In other words, not a single building can collapse without express written permission and
now how do we know this?
And
we don't.
Preparation of all the buildings to be demolished.
Speculation,
according to the military
quote-unquote speculation.
Killbox battle plan.
He uses that word a lot.
We're going to review some of the poppycock cover stories because that's sort of what they leave us, right? Lots of poppycock cover stories.
He uses it as a broad
We're also going to celebrate the anniversary of several other port facility murders that you may have forgotten.
Specified as a killbox.
Military intelligence does kill operatives and or
military intelligence, as in British
areas.
Intelligence.
So you do know that before the World Trade Center
established the CIA in the late 40s,
which was September 11th, 2001.
And the NSA was
Everybody remembers where they were during the New York City
to be infiltrated by Operation Paperclip people pretty heavily.
Port Facility, World Trade
As far as I've been told.
Demolitions of 3 office towers.
I've never seen evidence to that effect.
There's other buildings. There's a Marriott hotel there. There's other office buildings. That's what
people are saying quite a bit.
Lesser stature. But before we had the World Trade Center, we had a whole host of other port facility murders. On February 15th, 1898, we had the explosion and sinking of the USS Maine in the port of Havana, Cuba, another port facility guarded 24/7 by the United States Marines in Cuba, a completely controlled island through Guantanamo Bay at the east end of the island. The United States Navy has always had the island of Cuba under 24/7 surveillance and control for over 140
penthouse too.
years.
I finally figured out
Since
how the Manson
before the
family
USS
got
Maine
control
sinking.
over the top
So it's very
floors of the
suspicious that a
building
United
that
States
they occupied in Hamburg, Germany.
armed battleship
Charles
could
Manson was in
sink in the
charge
port
of
of
simply
Vasili, killing
securing the floors
268
below the
seamen.
penthouse during operations.
And of course, there was an
And then he would be
investigation
up in the
afterward,
penthouse
and it
later,
concluded that an
hiding out,
external bomb
asleep,
device had been planted on the hull, and
as
that's what
construction was
caused the
going on
sinking.
below
But
during the daytime.
most people didn't believe that poppycock story because they believed that
So they
the
occupied
devices
and
to
controlled the
explode the
penthouse,
USS Maine
I
were
guess by agreement.
concealed inside,
And then
inside, like an
Manson would
inside
go
job,
out and
inside the
ensure
battleship,
security.
in the
Floors
coal
below were
ovens.
securely empty
That is what blew out these
before the
huge holes
safety
in the
signal was
hull.
given.
We'll never know
For
because,
the,
as you know,
rock
with
group people
World Trade Center,
and what have you
the
to approach
military
and climb the
authorities
stairs
always
up to
destroy the crime
penthouse.
scene so that you are unable to prove your points.
The crime
so in the case
scene
of
was,
the USS Maine, it sat there
in the case of
at the bottom of the
9/11,
harbor for about 11
destroyed
years
ahead
until
of
they
time.
refloated the USS Maine
as part of
and
the
towed it
terror
about 100
operation.
miles over to West Keys,
They used terrorists
West Florida Keys, where they
to do the
scuttled
operation.
it,
All right,
where
real
it
terrorist
rests
people
in much
networked
deeper
in with
water, probably
intelligence.
about 100 feet below the surface,
Somehow they were
in the
controlled
Florida Keys. So it
enough
is no
to
longer at the
willing to
port
commit suicide.
of Havana, which
Islamic
was home to Fidel
fanaticism, who
Castro,
knows?
home to Jose Menendez, home to Jeff Bezos' stepdaddy, Miguel Bezos. He grew up in Santiago, Cuba, which is where Fidel Castro went to Jesuit indoctrination school. It's on the perimeter of the Guantanamo, Navy base. That's where Jeff Bezos' stepdaddy went. That's where Fidel Castro was
Jesuit
indoctrinated.
indoctrination
Where
school in the form of a
Perdomo
gash down the
came
side of the
from.
building.
Jose Perdomo, the gentleman who was part of the
Symbolic of something.
CIA kill team in Florida.
Now this
Operation
kill
40,
team stuff,
and then murdered John Lennon at the Dakota.
there's some truth to it,
where
but
they
it's
filmed Rosemary's Baby.
the Manson
And, John
family
Lennon was killed with
produced
Yoko Ono
kill
standing there
teams,
dumbfounded,
to
because she
be up
prevented him
on
from having any kind of
10050
legitimate security.
Cielo Drive
And so
to
John Lennon is
kill a couple
basically
people, at
assassinated
least
by his own
two,
doorman,
maybe three.
Jose Perdomo,
And then
came
also
from
help
Havana,
fake
Cuba,
the murders of
where the USS Maine was sunk. And you should
Sharon
know that the
Tate
USS Maine was
and Seabright, in my
constructed in New
opinion.
York City near
That's the way
the
I'm
port
weighing
facility
things
of
to
World
my own
Trade Center at
satisfaction
the
right now.
naval shipyards in New York. Yes, that's where the USS Maine
And they
came
had
from.
another
So when
team
you
up there in the
please
form
be
of probably
advised
Manson
that
just
I'm
waiting
connecting
outside
some dots here, that the USS Maine
the
was a
house
false flag
for people
attack
to try and leave the
by
house.
military intelligence, Navy
And then they
intelligence. You know
had
where Ron DeSantis works?
probably
He works for Navy
Squeaky
Intelligence.
from recovering
Office
JSK,
of Navy Intelligence.
so it could be
Ron
taken
DeSantis.
away. And
Well, the
he
people that control Ron
witnessed,
DeSantis, the fake governor
a
of
dead
Florida,
Abigail
they control the
Folgers
USS Maine
and
construction in New York City. They control
dying
the
or being
construction and demolition of it in the port of Havana.
a murder in
Then
progress
They scuttled it in
for
the
Wojtek
Florida
Frykowski
Keys.
having his head bashed in, I guess, according
That's
to
who
things.
controls Ron DeSantis. That's who controls the World Trade Center demolition. Was military intelligence, and obviously Navy military intelligence has to be involved with World Trade Center.
We
or
don't
you
know
cannot
that
have a port
exactly for
facility
sure.
go bye-bye.
You got people that are
You should
networked
also know
together
that the
from
World Trade
various,
Center towers,
some of
the
them
Twin
from
Towers,
various armed forces, I guess.
WTC number 1 and 2, buildings 1 and 2 were 70% empty at the time of their demolition. The Wikipedia page says that there were between 14 and 18,000 people.
We have no
at
way
work,
of knowing that.
that morning of September 11th. I'm
Exactly.
calling poppycock on that. First of all, why is there such a wide difference? 14,000, 18,000, that's 4,000 people
Well,
different.
it's an estimate.
So in other words, Wikipedia doesn't know how many people
Estimates
were. Well,
tend
I'm
to
going to tell
cover
you,
a
that's why you
range,
come to
right?
my channel. There couldn't have possibly been more than 6,000 people, 3,000 apiece.
How do we know
in
that?
buildings 1 and 2. There were
How
a
do we
grand
know?
total of 0 people in
What
building
evidence?
7, which didn't collapse until after 5 p.m. that day, September 11th. That's building 7. That's, I believe, 47-story building across the street from buildings 1 and 2. Buildings 1 and 2,
Like when I speculate,
in
I
theory,
try to
could
have
hold up
something
to
to ground my
22,000 people,
speculations,
11,000 apiece.
evidence-wise.
However,
Even if it's just
nobody
movie
wanted
scenes.
to rent space in the World Trade Center. Wall Street's not interested
Clearly,
in buildings
they
that are
are a
laced
means
with
of
asbestos.
communication that is used for
Matriculites
secret,
from Libby,
relatively
Montana.
secret
I happen to know that
communications.
because I did a bike race
That's why I
in
talk
Libby,
about PT Boat
Montana,
109.
where I
It's in the
learned
movie scenes.
W.
It's been
R.
published where everything I
Grace's
talk about.
mine for matriculites, and their number one sale was to the World Trade Center project.
Yeah, the
which
asbestos
was a
thing's
construction
aside.
project
It's
that
a
went
side
from
issue. It's relatively
1966
unimportant.
to 1973 when
It's,
the World
shall we
Trade Center
say,
complex was debuted for use.
plausible
1973.
motivation
This, of
for,
course, is simultaneous to the building of
profiting
the
from
Bank of
this,
America
yeah.
Tower at 555
which,
California Street in
it's
San
an
Francisco,
adjunct issue, I
which
guess you could
was
say, that would
which
be
was
planned
debuted
into
in
the operations ahead
1969.
of time.
Then the
as
Transamerica
part of the
Pyramid, a
resulting
couple of blocks
propaganda.
away on Montgomery Street, 600 Montgomery Street, between
It keeps
Clay and
people
Washington
distracted
Street.
and
We had the
misdirected.
debut of the Transamerica Pyramid. Also, I believe that was in 1973, 74.
And if the
We had
thinking is being
Pyramid.
done for
We had
you
J.
by people like
Sebring's
Alex
Barbershop,
Jones,
debuted in 1969.
you don't have to bother thinking yourself.
Literally,
right?
a few
They're
buildings
taking care of
from
everything for you.
the construction
They're
site
the leading
for
edge
the
of the spear,
Transamerica
right?
Pyramid was the Tom
The
Coomer,
fight,
J. Sebring,
which
financed
isn't
by
really
Abigail
happening.
Folger,
Okay.
and
America's
her mother,
losing.
Enos Mejia, was there for the debut,
Losing.
along with
Christians are
Paul
losing.
Newman and
Republicans
his wife.
are losing, and it's all by
Steve
design.
McQueen was not there for the debut. Steve McQueen appeared in the movie Bullet in San Francisco. He appeared in many films in and around Hollywood, and you should know that Paul Newman starred in the Towering Inferno, which featured the Bank of America building in San Francisco, with Steve McQueen,
I
who
try to
previously
speculate
starred in Bullet in
systematically,
San
too.
Francisco.
Context,
Steve McQueen
evidence,
appeared in Towering
everything
Inferno for
that I come
555 California
across in my
Street. At the
studies.
corner of California Street and
If I
Kearney,
can get to the point
at
where
the,
nothing contradicts me,
northwest
I'm a lot more
corner,
confident in my
sits the
speculations.
Swedish marble rock known as the Banker's Heart.
But you got to look at
It was,
all the evidence.
designed by a
Otherwise, you're
Japanese
just
kamikaze type
basically
artist,
jacking yourself
and it
off with a
stands for the
confirmation
cold-heartedness of a banker.
bias,
I think that's very
which
appropriate.
is a phallic
Most people don't know
analogy
that. I
in alchemy,
personally
by the
have
way.
touched the Banker's Heart over 100 times to remind myself of what I'm dealing with. I used to audit the world's largest bank, which was headquartered at that building, and featured that stupid
See, these
rock,
people select
which a lot of
evidence.
people called the Black Stone, and a lot of
And
people
they
in the
also
know
lie
refer to it as the
about
Banker's
evidence.
Heart, cold as ice. There it was. Anyway, that was constructed at the exact same time that the World Trade Center buildings were being built. We had the Bank of America building in San Francisco and the Transamerica Pyramid under construction at the time that the World Trade Center came online in 1973. Like I said, on the morning of the demolition, I seriously doubt there were more than 3,000 people per building. It's a grand total of 6,000 people. I'm sure there were hundreds of people over at Building 7. 100%
We
of
just
them
don't
got
know how
out.
many people
In the case
were
of
inside those
buildings 1 and
buildings,
2 at the World
for
Trade
sure.
Center, at least 55%.
Especially if you're going
of
to
the
guesstimate
people,
a
more than
lower
half,
estimate than
escaped
official
and fled to
estimates.
safety, and about 45%.
Some people likely got the message and
approximately
didn't
40,
show up.
45%
No doubt,
of
got
the
phone calls
occupants
or
of
whatever,
buildings
but there's
1
no way
and
to
2,
prove
the
that
Twin
unless you're in the
Towers,
NSA.
were killed.
Because I
And
know
what
the
I
NSA
believe
was
was
keeping
a
track of phone calls dating back in the
multidisciplinary,
previous century.
multiple weapon systems.
That's why they changed the phone system
attack,
during
primarily
the Bush
direct energy
administration, right
weaponry
around the
and
turn of the century.
nuclear
The larger number of
devices
numbers that you got
and
to
or
punch to make a phone
materials
call,
that
a
could
local
have been
phone
painted
call,
on. You
puts
do
you
know
under
that
that
they
system
probably
of being
spent a
monitored.
minimum of 6 months preparing
They
Building
needed
7,
enough computer
Building
power
1 and
to
2, the Twin
accomplish that.
Towers, for their demolition. And that can easily
Storage
be done in a
capacity
port
or
facility
whatever.
because you can work on the buildings 24/7
Infrastructure.
for as long as it takes to get them prepared
This is
for
nonsense.
direct energy.
There's no way
attacks.
they would have that many
And you shouldn't be
maintenance
surprised. You
teams
should
preparing
use
the buildings for
World Trade
demolition.
Center as a metaphor for the situation you have in your
They had
neighborhood
some
today with
suspicious
5G
activities
smart
going
grid
on,
towers
like,
and
you know,
antennas that you can hardly see. You can
artists
see
and
the
what have
4G
you
towers; they're
being
rather
up on floors
conspicuous.
there that
The
had the
5G
walls, the interior
mechanisms are
walls
very
all
small
exposed,
little
and they opened up
antennas
one of the
that
windows,
give
I
you
guess
micro
plexiglass windows. Were
laser
doing something,
focused
but we don't know
energy
exactly what they
pulsing.
were doing.
And that's what we have to fear is the 5G. It's a weapon system. It's a militarized weapon system. Cell phones can operate on 1G. They don't need 5G. All right, anyway, what I wanted to tell you is the USS Maine and the destruction of the crime scene after the sinking of the USS Maine. Remember the Maine into hell with Spain, according to William Randolph Hearst, and telling his photographers, you provide the photographs and I will provide the war. The Spanish-American War, which is really a proxy war for Britain.
That's suspicious activity.
Spain was not an enemy of the so-called United States. It was the enemy of the British Empire.
They might have been up there for legitimate
reasons. To the East India Company.
In my opinion, it's just not necessary.
So this whole concept that America
jet airliners
take care of the job for 6 months is poppycock. You know, we invaded the Philippines. We already had invaded Cuba, so there's nothing to fight for in Cuba. And if you're going to blame the Spanish for the sinking of a United States Maine, you better look pretty hard at Navy intelligence, because you had to allow Spanish frogmen in there to plant a bomb if you're going to believe the poppycock story. And if you're going to believe
that's a whole other issue to look at for
that hijackers crashed airplanes into 2 of 3 buildings, taking out 3 like bowling pins, if you're going to be dumb enough to believe that,
well, that's what happened.
Dumb enough to believe that the United States Navy can't guard its own port facilities. Let me go on to some other examples of port facility homicides that have never been solved because military crimes are never solved.
What do they do with smoking gun evidence? They cover it up. How do you do that?
All right. We had enough operatives John Fitzgerald Kennedy, which had his head blown off in the port facility of Dallas, Texas.
Soviet underground
I said
operatives.
Port facility of the Dallas, Texas, near the railroad yard, and killed by a sniper who was shooting from the railroad trestle that covers Elm Street.
They're going to be called down.
That is
anyway.
where the kill shot came from. Don't listen to Oliver Silverstein Stone's version, where Oliver Silverstein Stone did was to reposition
Communists
the kill shot from the book depository, which most people didn't believe anymore, the 6th floor, and he repositioned it to the picket fence on the grassy knoll,
left
where
is
the kill shot
forced
did
into
not
slavery on some
So
level
thank you
or
very
another.
much, Oliver Silverstein, for
With the
adding
former
confusion
top-down
instead of
infiltrators
clarity.
becoming
And you
the
should know with World
policing
Trade Center, we have Larry Silverstein,
middle-class
who
status.
controlled the lease, which he signed a lease for the empty spaces. The empty space at the World Trade Center,
it makes
1,
sense that
2, and
Silverstein
7.
would be involved
There's Larry
in,
Silverstein controlling a lease that's
activities,
worth nothing because it has no revenue associated with it.
You know, the whole
See if
idea
he
of
can
buying
rent out
into
the
this
empty
situation,
space laced with asbestos. Larry Silverstein
knowing ahead of time
secured
that
that
he
lease
would
in July
benefit hugely
2001.
from
And you're
certain
telling me
events
that 3 months, 90 days
planned
later,
well ahead of time to take place.
the buildings are demolition,
But
just in time for him to collect his
evidence you
insurance,
could take to court is
which is
non-existent.
highly dubious because the lease that Larry
At least in
Silverstein
our
held
court system
is worth
that we
nothing.
have today.
It has
and
really
back as far as
zero
2001.
value. Zero value. But then he ended up collecting hundreds of millions
Evidence.
of dollars. He had to go to
If
court
you take
and fight
somebody
for
to
his
court, you
money.
need real evidence.
But I find it ironic that
That a court
Oliver
would
Stone's
accept,
real name is Silverstein,
even in a
and that
genuinely
Larry
free
Silverstein was the controller of the empty space at the World Trade Center, and both of them are engaged in concealment of the truth, which is that it's a port facility that was demolitioned. In the case of Dallas, they demolitioned John Fitzgerald Kennedy's brain. All right, then we had George Sullivan, a black man who controlled the lease in much the way that Larry Silverstein controlled the lease at World Trade Center. George Sullivan controlled the lease of the Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco.
Now they're sinking things like
at
this all the
18
time.
Well, next door to 1849
And if you want to
Geary
research the
Boulevard,
Fillmore
the
Auditorium, you'd
building
have
that
to
shares
look
a
up all
wall
the evidence for
is
that yourself.
the auditorium where you have concerts or
I only
ice
use
rinks or roller
juxtapositions
skating.
videos to get some
And
kind of a
that's where the
sense
Grateful
of
Dead
geography
appeared for decades
in
afterwards.
California.
Anyway,
and
George
some other
Sullivan,
places, but
we were
I
coming up
make
on the summer of love,
very
1967.
careful use of
But
it.
a year
and
before
really
that
only
was
if I do my own
August 2nd,
researches,
1966. And it
try to get a
appears
sense
that
of
we
what
wanted
to
Bill
research
Graham to
maybe
take
on
over that
level. That's why I
auditorium, and
originally
George
started
Sullivan
watching
was
his
perhaps
videos.
being uncooperative, so he got shot in the head.
And the first videos
in
of
the
his
port
that
of
I
San
encountered
Francisco
didn't have him
at about 3
raving
o'clock
about
a.m. in the morning
chemtrails
on August
on
2nd,
them, so
1966. That freed up the
they kind of
lease
flew
for
under
the
my radar
Fillmore
for a little
Auditorium
while.
and the Summer of Love. to come
till
in
I started
1967.
realizing what was
Then
going
we
on
had
with his videos, which is
Huey
cover-up
Newton,
activity.
the so-called fake president of the Black Panthers.
These California people
He
are
was done away
connected,
with on August 22nd,
banking,
1989,
Great Britain,
in the Port of Oakland, 2
Communist
blocks from
China.
the Container Gate in the Port of Oakland.
Lots of
There's
them
a lot of Masonic
concentrated in that
things going on with these
Hollywood to
dates,
San
people. We got a lot
Francisco
of activity
region.
in the month of August. You know that John F. Kennedy was killed November 22nd, 1963. So if you add the 1-1 of 11 to the 2-2 of the day of the month, you'll get 33. 3363.
6.
Anyway, so JFK was killed on a 33.
Control.
11/22.
Virgo.
11/22
Control measures taking
is 33.
place.
11
Sixth
plus
floor
22
of the
equals
school
33.
school book
John Kennedy
depository.
killed November 22nd,
A
1963.
phallic object
George
up
Sullivan
there,
killed
lethal,
August 2nd, 1966 in a port facility. Huey Newton killed August
getting the
22nd,
job done.
1989.
Magnesium-filled
in Oakland Port
bullets,
facility.
3 of them.
Tony Scott,
All 3 must
the
be
brother,
fired.
the younger brother of Sir Ridley Scott,
Then
Tony
the rifle
Scott
must be
murdered
reloaded with
or
2
suicided
normal
off
rounds
the,
of ammunition.
Vincent Thomas
During the
Bridge
wipe
in
down
San
phase,
Pedro,
which
over
must be
the port of
efficiently
Los
conducted.
Angeles. The port of Los
To
Angeles.
be downstairs in time to
Yes,
pick that
that's what I said.
Coca-Cola
Tony
back
Scott
up off
killed
the
August
table
19,
and pop the cap off of
2012.
it just as the
Then we had
police
Robin
officers
Williams
coming in there.
garroted on August
Nearly a
11,
perfectly executed operation.
2014 at
Assassination operation.
Paradise Cay Cove,
And subsequent cover-up.
also known as District 29 in Marin County. 29. An
If you
enclave,
understand sinks, you
a
understand
cul-de-sac,
that
a dead end, unless you have a boat. And Robin Williams
entire
did have a
Hebrew
boat yacht
infrastructure
club
of the
there.
world was
Now,
concentrated
it wasn't
on
technically
that
a port
assassination.
facility, but he is 2 miles
Through the
south
mob,
of San Quentin,
through
which is a port facility. You know, the prison of San
KGB
Quentin was a
and
port
Soviet
authority
Union,
before it was a California State prison.
all
It
symbolically
was a
linked
port
into
facility,
that
and
situation.
Robin Williams' Paradise Cay Cove address is 2 miles
Hollywood,
south of San Quentin
Even, you could
port
argue,
facility. So what I'm saying is
more
Robin Williams
peripherally or
was killed
contextually.
effectively in a port facility, either at the boatyard, which is walking distance from his home,
more of a
or
marginal
from
type
Port of
thing
San
with
Quentin, which is a
Marilyn
longer walk from his
Monroe,
home. There's no sidewalks. So it's
the
kind of a
honeypot
dangerous
that
walk.
got undermined.
But for most of that
and
walk,
I guess
there's no
fell in
sidewalk.
love as a result.
So what I'm saying is that that's 7 port facility
Maybe,
murders. The big one, of course, the
that's what I'm
granddaddy
seeing.
is Manhattan, New York, port facility 9/11.
CIA honeypot. How do you
2001,
toy with that situation?
2,611 people killed.
Apparently,
in
it
the World Trade
involves
Center.
sexual
The
relations.
second one is the USS Maine, which was created in the naval
And
shipyards. of
undermine
New
their
York.
operation. And they get
268 men killed. And then the other 5 port facility murders are just one-off. JFK, George Sullivan, Huey Newton, Tony Scott, and Robin Williams. Anyway, you add up all those numbers and you're getting up to about 3,000 people.
Yeah,
that were
how many of
killed
these
in
people
port
have actually been
facilities
murdered?
through no fault of their own.
A number of
I
them
don't
probably.
think, other
Others
than the fact that maybe some of them said no, right?
maybe just died.
Maybe Robin Williams was
They're
no
all lumped
longer
together.
cooperating. Maybe Tony Scott objected to the social engineering content of his films. Maybe
Obviously,
Huey Newton
they
didn't
can
want to be
murder
the
people,
president
but
of
it
the
has a lot
Black
more to do
Panthers.
with the
Maybe
vampire network
John
going
F.
on, in
Kennedy
my
didn't want to
opinion.
go with the flow anymore.
You're starting to lose your loot that you've been collecting
Maybe
up off
George
of somebody,
Sullivan
for
didn't
example,
like
and they
Wolford
volunteer
Jonker,
for suicide.
Bill Graham.
And the
Maybe
network
he
says,
didn't get
great,
along
we
with
can
them.
use that. Or
Anyway,
maybe not, but we'll
that's
kill you
our
anyway.
history.
Make it look like a suicide.
Poppycock cover stories are,
Maybe.
there's no shortage of them. All of those
but they really
murders,
use you
those
for
7
something.
events, killing 3,000 people, they all have fake book authors, they all have fake magazine articles, they all have Poppycock newspaper,
For example,
television documentaries,
Gosh, what's a
film
good example?
documentaries. They all have fake documentarians in charge. And whenever
Yeah.
you assign
I can't think of one.
CIA
right
cover
offhand.
artists to your crime, you know it's military. You know it's military. The
Because
military
all these
does the
significant
killing, and the
events involving
CIA
famous
does
people
the
wind up in the
apologizing
media.
for the killing
So
and
obviously
blaming
you can kind of
scapegoats. But if
spin
you
things for
believe
propaganda purposes,
that
but how much
hijacked
propaganda
airplanes
do you get out of it?
crashed 3 buildings, hitting only 2 of them, then you're a moron. You're an imbecile, and you should get off my channel. If you think office fires caused the collapse of the Twin Towers, you're a moron, and you should get off my channel.
Clearly,
Okay?
they
It's
contributed to that
impossible.
collapse.
We already had the Empire
The
State
engineering
Building
is
with office
clear.
fires
Okay.
and B-25 bomber crash into
the
it.
fires and the
it's
structural
nothing to do with
damage
concrete.
combined
It
together
has nothing to
resulted
do with
in building
fires.
collapses.
It has to do with direct energy weaponry and
It's
nuclear
nonsense.
chemistry
Nonsense.
materials to pulverize and liquefy steel and concrete.
Nonsense.
And the aluminum file cabinets and the plastic photocopy machines, which are
That's
obviously
clearly
easy
nonsense.
to implode. But steel and
You're going to
concrete
be up there painting
takes
people's
some
copy
doing.
machines with
And
nuclear
that's what we
materials?
had
That makes zero
at
sense.
9/11. Anyway, I'm here to celebrate for you that
Do you mind
you
if
should
we
not
paint
believe
your
anyone who
copier
tells you that
and your filing cabinets with
what
some
happened.
material?
Now, we have
That's
some
an
people
experiment.
who like to tell
That
you it's
doesn't make any sense.
inconclusive. Like Richard Gage, for example, the so-called former leader before he got booted out of the Truther movement, the 9/11 Architects and Engineers for Truth. Well, I had an
The
unfortunate
fact that he
run-in
would have
with,
gotten
Richard
booted out to me is
Gage,
evidence
who he
that
was babysitting a Department
somehow
of Energy
said something they
chemistry
didn't like and they
scientist
got
with
rid
over
of him.
275
Okay,
patents
just like
on
people
weapons.
are gotten rid of from
he was
web
a
forums
creepy
for
dude, and I'm here to tell
saying
you
the wrong
that
thing,
Richard
or
Gage should never
online
be trusted.
platforms.
Okay, he is the leader.
All you
of
have
the
to do is say
concealment
something
movement.
that contradicts
Even though he'll
the
tell you
narrative
the
being
official
maintained.
story of 9/11 isn't true. I mean, no offense, a third-grade child could tell you that, right? That
If
the
that
official
really
story is
happened.
false. That airplanes were hijacked by a CIA-controlled Osama bin Laden, whose parents,
As
and
far as Bin
family
Laden
is,
involvement is
like the
concerned,
Bechtel
it could be
family,
propaganda.
owning one of the world's largest construction
But clearly
companies,
they
which
made
works
use
for
of
the
Saudi
military.
Arabian
You got
operatives
Osama bin
to
Laden's family,
conduct the
you got
terror
Bechtel
operation,
family, then you got
which
the
was
Brown and
a
Root, which
terror
is owned by
operation.
Halliburton, a public company.
If it was
Those
sourced
other two
out of
companies, Osama bin
intelligence
Laden and
networking
Bechtel,
that
those are
involved
private. You can't own stock in
U.S.
those, and you can go buy
intelligence
stock in
community
Halliburton. Those are the three big
assets,
contractor companies that work
agents,
for the military.
operatives, whatever.
And if you're stupid enough to think that airplanes took out sophisticated buildings,
Airliners
your
did
brain is the
take
size
out
of a net.
sophisticated buildings. The sophistication of the buildings.
It's not worth discussing
helped
with you. You're not
process
capable
them.
of understanding
At
reason
least
and
in
logic.
regards to the Twin
All right,
Towers.
so-
Okay, they were, in my opinion, designed to be vulnerable to
Kind of
building
that's
fires.
that. I'm telling you that
The chimney shape of the buildings, for example.
the enemy always
collecting up
leads
all
the
that
resistance.
heat from
They
all
always
those
infiltrate it.
fires,
So that's what Richard Gage is. He's
weakening
there
the steel
to not
to the
tell you what
point where,
happened, because he's
it
not
would
telling
start
you what
to
happened.
bend
He's saying that the
immediately.
official story doesn't make sense, and, that
And
maybe
this is
it's
clearly
thermite.
evident in the steel
He doesn't even get
left
close to
over
direct energy
and
weapons.
taken
He doesn't
across to
talk
New
about
Jersey to be
radio frequency pulsing or the paved pause project,
collected up
which
outside
is
there.
phase,
I mean,
array,
huge
vector,
columns of
evaluation.
steel just bent
or pause,
like
phased
pretzels.
array weapon system. Or PAVE stands for
You have
phase
steel breakage and you
acquisition
have steel
vector
bending. Once that building collapsed, both
analysis,
took
I
place
think, or
as that building tore itself apart.
evaluation.
No demolition charges
Doesn't make any difference.
involved.
It's 5G. Invisible. The enemy is invisible now. It's
I'm
totally
looking for
concealed in
sinking
plain
that
view.
that's
You can't
taking
see
place
it
in this
because it's
video,
invisible.
but it's rather
Anyway, that's the
scant.
world in which we live in.
I
All
don't know
right.
if this video creator had the
Live
capacity
and let
to do
die,
that or
right?
not.
The Beatles. Remember the Beatles? Another fraudulent scheme brought to you by the Tavistock Institute of London, England.
It's one of my experiments.
Anyway,
I like
that's
to
the
compare
situation.
videos
We
to
have
see,
the United States of America is
differences
just
between
12 banking
videos
districts.
that were not likely
It's a colony
synced
of
with
the Bank of
anything,
London.
and,
There never was a United States
videos
of
that are
America. There
clearly
never
synced
was a
together.
constitution.
Maybe only
there is no
because,
Bill of
I'm
Rights. There
sending
is
signal
no
to the
law
effect
of the
that I'm
land.
watching the
There is
sync.
only maritime
The signal is
admiralty
being
law.
picked up
There is only subjugation
by people who have the
and
ability to do
enslavement
these things.
of people who are bewildered into thinking that they are free.
Cameramen that can
when you
dance
are not
around
free.
on
And you
the
live
set,
in a
for
techno
example, with their
enslavement system
camera a certain
that
way,
is today called a 15-minute city or
focusing in on
smart grid.
things, and then
And all they got to
editors
do is
doing
push the
similar
button
kind
or
of stuff.
throw the switch, and you'll find yourself
They're
locked
editing.
up in a travel-restricted zone known as a smart city, 15-minute city. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. And let's all remember the hoax cover stories that was the World Trade
They
Center.
showed this video, hoax
was
video,
true that they
because they
destroyed
edited it short.
at least
They
7
clipped it.
buildings
They
at
clipped
the
out
World
the
Trade
significant
Center. That part's
information that
true.
you could
And that they
use to
killed over 2,600
reveal to your own
innocent people.
satisfaction that
That's
the building
true.
did
But
indeed
everything else about
collapse
9/11 is a lie.
under its own
Everything
weight.
else is a lie. They haven't discussed direct energy. They
No
haven't
explosions
discussed,
taking place.
the types of
See,
weapons
this
that
is
could be
collapsing
painted
right in
on.
there.
or through a
Of course,
elevator
you've got,
maintenance
a
company. They
steel
haven't discussed that it's in a port
breakage
facility
down
controlled
below
24/7.
that
They
penthouse,
haven't. They've
causing,
concealed all the
panels on the
facts
outside
that
of
these
the
7
building to
events
kick
that I
out.
told you
See,
about
like it's taking place
all
right there.
occurred in controlled
It's random.
militarized
It's not
areas.
organized.
So I'm here to
It's
tell you
not
there
like a
is
demolition
zero
charge
probability
series.
that some
It's
foreign
random
force came
breakage
in.
of steel
Of course, it's an
taking
inside
place.
job. It's a military
No
NATO-approved
explosions.
job, just like the
Other
Sharon
than the
Tate
sound
murder,
of breaking
just
steel,
like
which must
the
be
Abigail
loud as
Folger
oh,
murder,
get
just
out.
like the Lino LaBianca murder,
Not the same thing as a
just like
demolition
the Paul
charge.
Stein
Okay,
yellow
those
cab
can be
driver
recognized
murder.
by
They
seismic
were all done in
readings,
militarized,
okay,
controlled
as
neighborhoods,
being what they
the
are.
same as World Trade Center. Thanks for listening. Port of New York. Have a great day.
They're hoping you just won't look at enough evidence, because there is evidence associated with this. But if you're serious, you get into the evidence on the scene and all the peripheral evidence and the contextual evidence going back through time. Okay? That's what I do, even if I do it casually over a course of a long period of time. I collect it up in my mind and then come to sensible conclusions that, are sensible to my own satisfaction and quite reasonable with good engineering sense, which television destroys in people, I might add. People that watch television night after night, they are destroying themselves on an intellectual level, on a mindfulness level, all kinds of levels. They're conditioned to be informed by centralized authorities, quote unquote, be informed. It's a conditioning process. And you're not thinking when you're just watching TV. Even the thinking you do watching the news or listening to Alex Jones is minimal at best. You're either jumping on that bandwagon or you're jumping on some other bandwagon that's provided for you, the left or the right. They're both provided things by some kind of quote-unquote God that you could call international banking and centralized banking. So this should be useful, everything that I've been talking about. I hope. I did not prepare ahead of time for this. That's going to be next year that I'm doing those kinds of videos. Careful preparation is required for some of the videos I'm going to be making. These rather lazily put together videos I've been doing. They're a matter of prevailing circumstance. You might say I put those videos together under a certain kind of lifestyle duress, which I'm New Year's resolutioning to myself to take better control of. And you could tell the media corporations themselves are editing short video clips that, they're not releasing the full clips at all. Some of those are in here being made very intelligent use of to demonstrate things. I have a great deal of gratitude for the individual that put this video together. And I'm going to preserve that individual's work and make intelligent use of it. This is a well done video. He put a lot of work in this, you can tell, and cared about the truth. And probably at some manner of risk, who knows? Because if they target you, they start with the subtle influences in your life. Somebody at the office did something wrong nearby, and somehow on documents your name is associated with that, even though somebody else did the thing, the questionable thing at the very least. Nobody gets fired or disciplined over the issue. Again, usually these are borderline things. At the time the events occurred, at least, they were borderline issues. A couple decades later, it's severely illegal to where you might find yourself in solitary confinement in prison over the issue of, allegations or whatever. Thank you for listening.